got your own style, that's just slang for you, ain't got it though. Talking like you got it, that's a problem, I might let them know.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be reviewing a head unit, and this is for an E90. I think it does fit some E60s as well. We'll be fitting this one in an E93, 2009 E93, so it's a 3 Series convertible. And this brand of this unit is Andream, and we're just going to do a quick unboxing, then we're going to do an install video and then a review. If the install goes for too long, I'll do the review separately, but hopefully it's short enough I can be all in this one video. But if it does go too long, you'll see a second video, and this will just be an unboxing and install. But I think the install is pretty straightforward, but yeah. So it comes packaged basically like this, so it's just in a plain cardboard box. And then inside that, it's in this black box just right here. So inside here, this looks like what's the GPS antenna. I have heard some people say you can use the factory antenna in the car, but I think we'll just use this for now. We'll see how it works. Then you have the wiring harness, or the little loom, where this will plug into the original head unit and parts of the car. Then you've got some RCAs for reverse cameras and things like that. This looks like the USB, so I'm guessing you run these into the glove box for playing music off USB sticks and things like that. And then the head unit is in there, surrounded with some soft foam. So it's decently packaged. And then it's just wrapped in some plastic here. So I'll take this out, give you a closer look. So that's basically what it looks like. Now this is for a CIC, a car that has CIC. There's two different types, there's CIC and CCC. I'm gonna put an image up now on the screen of what a CIC like radio cluster thing looks like, and then what a CCC one looks like. But as I said, this is for a CIC, so you need to find out what your car has before you buy one of these, and then buy the correct head unit. So yeah, that's the screen. It looks like there's an SD card slot or something there, and then maybe a microphone just in there. Maybe 2 microphones or something like that. On the top there, looks like maybe that's the Wi-Fi antenna. And then on the back, we just have the plugs where everything will plug into. So I'm guessing that loom we saw before will plug into here. And then underneath looks like the radio antenna and possibly the GPS antenna. So yeah, that's about it for the unboxing. You can see the little label there, so it's telling you that it's got 4G. So there is space for a SIM card. I think that's part of the loom. And it's got 4 gig of RAM and 64 gig of onboard, basically, hard drive space. And it is running Android 10. And as you can see there, it says E60 CIC, so this does fit some E60s. But yeah, today we're installing it in an E90 or E93. All right, so I've actually just found out that one of these is a reset button, I think. So it's to reset the head unit. I think it's the bottom one there. Looks like there's a little button in there. I'm not 100% sure, but that's what it looks like. And I mentioned before about being able to put a SIM card in this, and I said it was part of the loom. It's actually part of this thing here. So when you open this up, you can see there's a slot for a SIM card there. So now we're just going to install it in the car. We're going to show you how to take the old one out and put the new one in, and yeah, hopefully it goes smoothly. So we'll see you in the car. So just before we continue, we did reach out to Andream and ask them if we did a video, would they look after us on price or something like that. And they pretty much said no, but they'd give us some money back after we did the review. I think they said $40 or $50, but either way, it's not going to sway the opinion of the review. We'll tell you what we think of it either way. So yeah, let's get started. All right, so this is the car right here. As I said, is an E93, which is a 335i convertible. It doesn't matter what 3 Series it is, but as long as it's an E90 and it's got the CIC screen, this head unit will fit. But yeah, just double check. Like I said, I showed the 2 images before of a CIC screen and a CCC screen. Make sure you have the right one, and it should fit. So we're going to start the install now, walk you through it. Just another thing, no manuals or anything actually come with the head unit. There's just some videos on YouTube that I think they link to that kind of show you how to install it and things like that. But yeah, I thought we'd do our own little install video here. So this is my dad's car, so I'm going to be doing it with him, and we're about to get started now. So basically got our trim removal tools. They're plastic, so they don't damage any of the trims. Just got a Phillips head screwdriver here, and then just this screwdriver here with if there's any hex bits or anything like that. And yeah, I think that's all we should need. All right, so this is the dashboard. The gear stick, we're just covered in some towels and things like that, just so if anything drops on it or we pull anything out, it doesn't scratch it. You can pull the gear stick out kind of easily enough, but it's probably best to leave it in case we break it or something like that. So yeah, just covering the center console like that with some towels, and hopefully we don't damage anything.
This is a CIC screen.
All right, so this is what you'll basically see if you have a CIC screen in your car. The menu looks a little different to the CCC screen. So yeah, like I said, I've put those 2 images up before, so just find out what you have before you buy the head unit. But they do sell both models, one for a CIC and one for a CCC. So yeah, just make sure you get the right one. All right, so the first step is to actually remove this decorative trim here. So you might have wood grain, you might have silver, all these are different, but use the plastic pry tool and just find a good section to kind of lever up and pull on it. Can be a bit hard to remove, just kind of be careful you don't snap anything. And just as you lever one section up, just work your way along until you get that off. So as you can see, just working your way along, it will pop out eventually. And the vents and all the buttons and things like that will come with it as well. So we might have to unplug some of those. Once you release this panel here, you have to unplug some of the things like the start-stop engine switch, which is just a plug that looks like that. It was a bit hard to film actually getting it off, but I think you just squeeze one of the tabs in as you pull it. And is there any more buttons? Yeah, there's those there. Or is that the whole thing?
There's one under here.
And then there's one underneath for these buttons here. It's a bit hard to film, like I said, because it's right behind the trim, so can't really get in there with the camera. All right, so this is that trim now removed. I'm just going to show you the cables that we had to unplug to actually get to it, or to get it out. So there's one on the back of the start-stop switch, which was pretty easy to get off, but there's two under here. Sorry, that might be hard to see. There's two just in here, which is for the hazard switch, the DSC button and all that stuff. One of them, the front one came out pretty easily. The back one was a bit hard to get to. We had to use a little screwdriver. And when you do unplug that trim piece, you'll see that these plugs are different. So putting it back together won't be a problem because they'll only go in one way. And then you've got the start and stop switch thing over here as well. So the next step is to pull the climate control panel out, and this just little plastic cover here clips off, just like that. And then once again, you just want to unplug these. These are a lot easier to get to. The problem with these is that they're so tight, they only just reach where the panel was, so they're very hard to get to, whereas these, you've got a bit of play with them, so they're a lot easier to remove. So these are pretty easy. Just push the grey bit down and then backwards, and the clip will pop out. So nice and easy.
You push the button down.
Same one with that. All pretty similar. They pop out. This plug here that we're working on at the moment just has two little kind of clips or pins on the side. There you go. They just kind of press in like that, and then the plug pulls out. So that's what it looks like at the moment. We've got this whole trim panel out, and we've got the climate control panel out, and now we're going to move on to actually pulling the kind of original radio part out here, which is just where if you have a CDs, where the CDs and stuff go. And it's kind of the same deal as the thing above that. You just pop out this panel on the top of it. So this on this car actually came out all in one piece, this top section and the bottom section here. So once that's out, we'll just have a few more things to unplug. So
take that out. Just
remember that this ribbon cable does, when you put it back together, it does travel up here, and then it seems to go through one of these holes back into the unit. So when we put it all back together, we'll hopefully remember that and show you. But that's basically the way it looks at the moment. And now we're just going to pull this kind of part of the head unit out, which is where you change presets, CDs, volume and all that thing. There are some screws you can see there, and there's one on the other side. I think once those come out, and maybe we have to take those out as well, I think the whole thing will come out as a whole. So just undoing that last screw now. So there was 4 around this area. I'll show you those a bit up close in a second. So there was 1 screw there, a screw there, and the same on the other side, 1 there and 1 in there. So now hopefully it should just slide out. Yep, there we go. And there'll be plugs in the back of this as well. So this is where the gear stick may get in the way a little bit, but we'll try and just finesse it around, maybe put it in. I know these gear sticks don't really move, do they?
No, just pull it back a bit.
Yeah, so we might be able to pull the gear stick back just a little bit to clear this, and then unplug the what essentially is the radio in this car. So that was actually pretty easy. Just put a little bit of pressure on the gear stick and pulled it back, and then we've got all these to unplug. So this is where all the plugs that go into this head unit, essentially you're going to plug into the new one. So this is why you want to do all these steps to get all this kind of center console, not center console, but the center part of the dashboard apart. So just unplug everything that's here so you can get the original radio / head unit out. And this will go back in the car and stay exactly where it was, but we need some of the plugs and cables for the new head unit. So I think what happens with this head unit is the new one plugs into this, and then on the loom of the new head unit, there's another cable that comes back out and looks like it plugs back into the original. So it's kind of like a loop that goes in between these two, just so all this kind of stuff still works. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So we're just going to unplug everything here, and
that can rest there like that.
There, I think they're right. So that can actually stay there like that. I don't think you need to unplug everything, do you?
No.
Okay.
We only need to unplug this.
Yep.
And there's one thing we've got to do when we get the other plug, but we'll do that in a second. I'm just going to get this in a good position where it can rest. Mm-hmm. Which is probably all right there.
Yep. So at this point in the install, you'll have all the center console kind of taken, not console, but the center of the dashboard kind of taken apart. You can leave this resting here, and again, this is why we put the towels down so we could rest this, because this doesn't need to come all the way out. You basically just need to unplug this plug here. So what we're probably going to do now is actually remove the original screen, and then we can run the cables up to it and show you exactly what we're going to be doing next. So these use some hex heads, or Torx bits, sorry, not hex heads. Kind of trying to, yeah, there we go. I'm not sure exactly what size that is, but it's good to try and get a really short screwdriver, because these can be hard to get in there just because of the angle of where the screen is in the dashboard. It also works if you have a Torx bit on a socket. Oh, sorry, on a socket or a ratchet, sorry. Because yeah, it can be a bit hard to get in there. So there will be 2 screws, one right there that's being unscrewed at the moment, and one just over a little bit. So yeah, like I said, a short screwdriver is really helpful, because if it's too long, you just can't get the angle on it to get the screw out. And that's the screw there. So it's just a Torx bit, and then another one up here. And once those screws are loose, you should be able to just pull the head unit or the screen down and then out just like that. So it's quite easy. Now just keep in mind that this is actually a screen, it's not really the head unit. The head unit's kind of like this part of it. But yeah, with the new one, the screen's kind of got all the Android and all that stuff built into it that'll interface with the old head unit basically, which is this big part down here. So now that this is out, we'll just have to unplug some of the plugs behind there. So these are the plugs here that you'll be removing from the old screen.
Clips in the side that you have to pull in.
Yep.
So you have to pull these in, disconnect that.
So getting the antenna cable out is a little bit tricky. You just have to push down a tab that's on the top there, and then you can kind of lever it off with the screwdriver. Oops. And it should eventually come out. There we go. So now the original screen is completely free and out of the car, just like that. And we're left with, at the top here, we're left with the antenna cable and that little power loom, wiring loom. What's wrong?
This is not the antenna cable.
Oh, what is it?
This is the
what? Communication.
Yeah, it's the cable that it's like the data cable, if you like. You know what I mean? It's because the antenna cable doesn't come in here. The antenna cable only goes in here. Right. So this cable here is the one the one that is different on a CIC and a CCC unit.
Okay.
This is a 4-pin plug, and that's got the data in it, and that goes into the new head unit.
Okay. So, so this one here isn't an antenna, like I said. It's actually just basically the data cable that goes down to this, and the antenna is actually in this part of the unit. So, but yeah, either way, everything's pretty much taken out now, so we can get the new loom right here, see where everything plugs in, and try and start the install of the new head unit. So feeding the new cable harness in is a little bit tricky, but what we've done is just gone straight out the back here. Obviously keep these big blocks, these big ends here, and at the top you'll end up with a small end. So what we did is went just straight through the back, and it's really hard to see. We've gone up through the back of where the climate control was, and then we've come out here, so just behind there. And there's a little section in the top of the dashboard that comes through here and ends up going through there. A little channel we're able to push the cables through, and there they are there. So we've run all the cables. Hopefully when we put it all back together, nothing's in the way, but I'll let you know if it is. But yeah, we had to do that off camera because we were trying to juggle the light and the wiring and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, now we're gonna just, I guess, start plugging a few things in and seeing if it works, and then go from there. What we need to do now, you can see there's this green wire here and this black kind of ribbed cable. That's the optical. So we have to actually remove that from the old this old harness here, and we need to install it into this side of the new harness. So yeah, I don't know why they didn't just kind of make it so this plugs in and the cable continues through, but obviously I'm guessing they didn't want to include an optical cable in the loom because they're probably expensive, or maybe they don't know how to do it. So yeah, unplug it basically from here. I'm going to show you how to do that now, but we'll unplug it from here and move it into the new loom. Where those 4 holes are is technically what these 4 holes are here. So with a small screwdriver, we should be able to pop those out. So there is a little tab that you just press down, kind of very hard to see, but it's on the inside, just basically above the green cable. There's a little clip there, you press up with the screwdriver, and then they'll just slide straight out, just like that. And then we're going to be plugging that into the new head unit loom, which is where these 4 holes are. Oops, sorry, where those 4 holes are, just there. So you can see they're exactly the same. This new one's just missing the optical, which we're moving now. So that should slot straight in where the old one came out into the new unit. and that's it.
This here?
So now we can plug the new, you can see here the new harness has these 2 blocks of cables basically. One of them will go into the old radio section here. Right, now with the new plug, they've got these little catches on them so the cables don't just fall out of the back of the radio. So first you need to release that by pulling up like that and then folding it backwards. And then you can see on the side there's these little like claw things, and they'll grab on the new, they'll grab in the old radio so that it kind of don't fall out. So you push that in. Once it's all the way in, you push that flap kind of thing all the way down, and this should, yep, there we go, clicks in, and that makes sure the cables and the whole harness won't just fall out of the back, and everything's pressed in nicely. So now what we'll do is with the other side of the new harness, that will plug into the car's original harness. So this plug here, that originally was the plug that was in the radio, but now it'll plug into this. So it's kind of like a little bypass cable with what we're essentially doing. So they just press together like that, and same deal, you close that flap down. That'll just push everything together and just hold it there nicely so it doesn't just fall out. That's it. So there is an extra plug on the new Andream loom, which is this one here. We're not exactly sure where it goes yet. It doesn't have anywhere on the old radio down here that it plugs into. And we're also, there's nowhere for the old factory plug that was up here to plug into on the new screen. So we're thinking that maybe they just stay disconnected. So what we're gonna do is plug some things back in and maybe just see if the screen fires up, and yeah, just see if it works, I guess. So the cables that we had coming out at the top here, which is part of the factory loom, we're gonna now be plugging into the new screen. So that pink kind of colored cable will go into the blue plug there. It's a bit hard to see. Some of these wires are just so tight, there's not much movement, so I can't really get the camera in there. But yeah, it looks like it's nearly in. And the next one will be the actual new loom that plugs into the new screen. And don't forget, at this point, if you're going to be running the GPS antenna and the SIM card and the USBs, that you probably want to run them down now. But what we're going to do before we do any of that is probably just see if the screen fires up and just make sure everything's like plugged in and working properly before we continue to run all those extra cables. Alright, so everything's now plugged into the back of the new screen. We've just got it sitting there loosely. We're going to see if we can kind of turn the car on just to see if the screen and everything else works. We've got all this buttoned up down here. Like I said, we're still not sure what this cable here was all about, or the one that was, or the old loom. There was one from the old loom that's behind this. We're not sure what that does. I'm guessing they stay unplugged because they probably get bypassed, but yeah, we'll try and, we might have to put this trim back in so we can use the start-stop switch just to see if everything still works. All right, so I've just pulled the start-stop button out of the trim just so we can see if we can get the head unit on. Hopefully none of this other stuff has to be plugged in. Knowing BMW, nothing will happen because everything else has to be plugged in. If that's the case, we'll probably just button everything up for the final time, but hopefully we can just see if we can at least get the screen on, make sure everything's working before we put everything back together. Otherwise we might be taking it apart again if something's not working or something's been plugged in wrong. Look at that. So yeah, that worked. We've just, yeah, like I said, we just plugged the start-stop switch in, and this is what we're greeted with. The screen's actually really nice and sharp. It's not showing so much in the camera, but it's really, really nice and sharp. I think this has an IPS screen, is that right?
Yes, I think
so. So it's IPS screen, which is really, really good. Nice and sharp. It's got some Chinese writing, so I'm guessing hopefully we can change that.
Buttons are working?
Yeah, the buttons down here are working. The little navigation switch.
Looks like that we've even got a little screen on there to preview.
Yeah. Now we've just got to get it out of Chinese. Good thing is it's also touchscreen, so you can get to things quickly. We're just going to work out where things are because it's currently all in Chinese. I don't know what any of that says. Oh, hang on, there's an ABC. Maybe that's language. That one there, yeah. Yeah, here we go. Yes, there we go. So now we're in English. And yeah, well, no, it looks pretty good. One thing I also forgot to mention is if you have if you have a factory reverse camera, it should still work.
It's got IGO on it.
There's the GPS with IGO. Yeah, if you have a factory reverse camera, it should still work. Now with my dad's car, he installed an aftermarket one, so we're not too sure if that is going to work yet, but we're going to give that a test. Will it work now, or does it have to be running?
As long as the ignition's on, I think.
Yeah.
I'll just put it on running.
It is. Yep, it's neutral. Yep. Okay. So one of the cool things about this new head unit is now it just looks like the old one, because if you hold down the menu button for 3 seconds, it toggles between the new Android system. There you go, that's the new one. If you hold it down for a few seconds, it takes you back to the original layout, which kind of cool because you can get to all your stuff still, which is good. So we're still just playing around with a few little things, trying out some settings and things like that. The reverse camera isn't working at the moment, but remember I did say it's an aftermarket reverse camera, so that could be why. But it may just be a setting where it's actually turned off. So we're just going to play around with it for a little bit, and then I'll get back to you and tell you exactly, well, we're going to put it all back together and I'll tell you exactly, yeah, if it's good or not. So one quick thing that we've found is in the settings of the new head unit, it gives you the option up here whether you have an aftermarket reverse camera, OEM or 360. So my dad, this car didn't originally come with a reverse camera, so my dad put one in and it involved using an emulator and things like that. So because of that, none of these options really worked properly. So we unplugged the RCA that went into the emulator, or from the aftermarket reverse camera, and then we select aftermarket, we plugged the RCA jack into the new screen's RCA jack for the reverse camera, and then you select aftermarket camera on the menu here, and now that works. So if you have a factory reverse camera, it'll probably work perfectly fine. And if you have an aftermarket camera that you plug in directly into this screen, it will probably work fine. But if you have done what my dad's done, and that's use an emulator to use a reverse camera with the original screen, then yeah, you might have to plug the RCA into the new screen. I hope that makes sense. It's quite confusing, but yeah. So a little bit of an update. Everything seems to work. We're just going to put everything back together properly, but first we're going to run those USB cables down into the glove box. So I'm not exactly sure how we're going to do that yet, but we'll find a little gap. Those two factory plugs I spoke about earlier, like this one here and that one that was down there, they seem to work with them not plugged into anything, so I'm guessing they just get bypassed and you don't use them anymore. But yeah, we're just going to run those cables and do some more tests on the head unit, and then I guess the next step is we'll just show you it all when we're buttoning it back up. Yeah, got to try and run them into the glove box. I think I can see a little hole kind of down the back there. We can run those into the glove box, but behind this dashboard is really, really tight. It's all plastic, as you can see. It's all pretty well sealed, but I think we'll find a way into the glove box, hopefully. All right, so we just ran those cables into the glove box, which are the USB cables and the 4G SIM card carrier. And if you look really carefully down the back here, there is a hole just where my finger's pointing. This factory data port actually comes out of that hole. So if you use that same hole, and we got some zip ties and just connected them together, we push them through and they end up coming out there in the glove box. So now we've got our USB ports in our glove box and the 4G SIM card carrier, and yeah, they're all done. So I think now we can actually just start putting everything back together. All right, so I'm just going to cut in here and let you know, when we first saw this audio output, we didn't know what it was for, but when we tried the new screen and stuff, there was no audio coming from the screen, but the original radio was still working. So we found out you have to actually run a 3.5mm cable from that plugs into here. We've just ran it down the side of the console here instead of, you can take all this out if you want to and run it there, but we ran it through the side there, and we've got it to come up through this handbrake section, and we have to actually drill a hole in the carpeted area here so we can plug the end of the 3.5mm jack into the auxiliary in. So that's how it works. If you don't have auxiliary in, from what I've read, you have to actually buy a FM transmitter. So yeah, you won't have audio unless you do this part, unfortunately. So yeah, that 3.5mm cable we just ran will come up through here and basically plug into the aux jack, but we're going to be putting a little grommet around here just to make it look nicer. Yeah, so this wasn't in the manual or anything like that, obviously, but we just did some Googling around, saw some other people who have installed similar head units said you have to actually run the 3.5mm cable from here, the audio output, which comes with the new head unit, all the way back to the auxiliary in jack, which is a little bit annoying. I'm not sure why they couldn't have picked it up off the original harness and then wired it that way, but yeah, it's been a bit of a nightmare so far with the install because of that. If you're installing this for the first time and you're watching this video, it should be easy for you because I've kind of tried to cover all the little issues we've come across. But yeah, we're nearly there. Once we plug this in, I think we're ready to put everything back together, hopefully, for the last time. So you can install the original radio back in without doing this, but this will make it a lot easier. We're just going to be cutting the top left, so this, oh damn it, yeah, this section here. We're just going to be cutting that out because of that big, the new junction of all the new cables. It's probably easier if it sits there when you try and slide the original radio back in. So that's the finished product. Which should allow the big chunk of cables to fit through a little bit better behind the original radio. One thing I just forgot to mention is the GPS antenna. It's got adhesive on the back, so we're just going to be pushing it in just up there as far as we can, and it should wedge into the plastic of the dashboard, and the tape should hold it there nicely as well. And then that just plugs into the back of the new screen, so that should be pretty simple. And we're going to do that now. So I'm just going to zoom in. That location right there is where we put the GPS antenna, and it's wedged in there really nicely, so that should be perfect. And the other end we'll just plug behind the head unit. So you're going to have a bit of cable left over, so we'll just roll that up. Some people run the GPS antennas all the way up to the kind of the roof and things like that, but it should work perfectly fine there. I've done a few of these in the past on different cars, and they seem to work really well just right under the dashboard there, so it should be perfect. All right, so now we're pushing in the original radio unit. This might be hard to do because there's a bunch more cables behind it now, so it might take a little bit of finessing, but it should go in. You might just have to move some things around, move some plugs out of the way as you're pushing it back, but there's quite a bit of space back there, so it should be all right. Okay, so we've got everything plugged in the back of the screen now, so that's the USB ports in the glove box, the SIM card holder, the GPS antenna, and then we've got the main loom down there. The one thing that we don't plug in is this was one of the cables from the factory screen, and we're not using that. That doesn't seem to do anything. Yeah, so that's about it. We're going to just put this in place now and give it a final test before we put everything else back together. Looks pretty factory, looks pretty good. So what we also just found out putting this back together is this part with all the buttons in it can actually pop out like that. So it makes it way easier to take those cables out and put them back in, because we're just having a real hard time trying to plug them back in with that still in the trim. So yeah, that actually just pops out with a bit of pressure. So now we'll be able to just put this trim back on the car and pull the cables through, plug it in, and then hopefully push that module straight back in the middle. Okay, so the trim is pretty much in. We've plugged all this stuff back in. This is what I mean by being able to pull this switch section out, and you can just put the wires in the back and then push it all the way back in. We're just going to leave things loose though. Make sure this head unit works, have a bit of play around with it, and then hopefully install everything back in the car for the final time. All right, so the unit's in. I'm going to do the review separately because the install's gone for quite a while now, I think. Two things that were a real pain with the install, or things to remember. If we knew these, we probably would have been way quicker to install it. One of them is to cut the corner of that plastic off, because putting the original radio back in the bottom was way easier. And the second thing is you have to run that 3.5mm auxiliary cord from the back of the new screen to your glove box. So if you don't have auxiliary in your car right now, like if you don't have an auxiliary jack in your car, you need an FM transmitter, which is a little bit annoying, but yeah, so I'll show you what it looks like installed. We haven't actually put the whole dashboard back together yet because we're still playing around with it, but I'll show you what the screen looks like in the actual dashboard. So that's what it looks like. It seems to fit pretty well. There is a tiny little gap. It's going to be hard to see on the camera. Really small gap under there, but that could actually be the dashboard in this car. Might actually be a little bit warped, but more than likely it's probably this head unit. But maybe after a while it might actually set in properly, but other than that, it fits really, really well. And yeah, just got to put the rest of this back together. So in terms of running the 3.5mm jack and all that kind of stuff, I think every Android car unit's going to pretty much be the same. So the only annoying thing is this didn't come with one. It also didn't come with a manual. There's hardly any information about these online, whether it be this brand or any other brand. So yeah, hopefully this video helps when you come to install yours. And I think that's about it, yeah? Yep. So we're going to do a review separately. I'm going to let my dad have a play around with it for a couple of days before we actually do the review, see if any problems come up. But yeah, so far it seems okay. But yeah, guess I'm going to end the install part here, and then check the link in the description for the review, because that'll come up straight after this. And yeah, if you want to buy the head unit, the link will be in the description below. Once again, I'm not getting anything for anyone buying this head unit or anything like that, so it'll be an honest review. And they said they might give us $40 or $50 back for reviewing the head unit, but yeah, whatever. So yeah, hope you enjoyed, and hope this makes it easier for you to install an Android head unit in your E90 or E60, I guess. Yeah, that's about it. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the review.
Money, mo, head to toe. Said you got your own style, that's just slang for you, ain't got it.